up with Toy Story, the first film and later the second being such a profoundly integrated part of my childhood that I don't really remember a time without it. Part of this was because of the prevalence of extra toys and merchandise that filled toy chests, basement floors, and dressing rooms, but it was also because, like every kid growing up, there was no limit to how many times I was willing to watch my favorite movies and shows. The repetition didn't bother me as a child. However, it wasn't until recently, almost halfway through my 23rd year, that I noticed a deeper theme running underneath the film, a deeply religious one. It might seem obvious to some that I'm referring to the aliens with their pious obedience to the mysteriously omnipotent being that occasionally reaches down from on high to choose a resident and take them to the other side, but such a cynical reading on both religion and the film isn't terribly interesting to me. Instead, I want to focus on the transformative effect the Christian idea of love will have on the Christian and how this idea plays out in Toy Story. To orient this discussion, I'll take heavy inspiration from Jean-Luc Marion's God Without Being, a difficult but refreshing look at religious metaphysics. Marion's text has been placed in a camp of postmodern theological explorations. However, while his commitments may be to Christianity, his intellectual framework is deeply embedded in the thought of Emmanuel Levinas, Jacques Derrida, George Hegel, Friedrich Nietzsche, Ludwig Wittgenstein, and most prominently in this text, Martin Heidegger. While the title of Marion's book might appear to be an attack on religion, it may be better to see the without as an inversion not of with, but within. The text wanders through the history of religious metaphysics, staying for some time on Nietzsche's infamous declaration that God is dead, and in many respects he joins with Heidegger in seeing that the dead God was only an idol, created from the idolatrous demands on metaphysics, the need of theologians and philosophers to have God on call conceptually. God has, in Marion's words, become a conceptual idol. Marion sees the history of religious metaphysics as being filled with concepts, which consign to a sign what at first the mind grasps with it. But such a grasp is measured not so much by the amplitude of the divine as by the scope of a capacitas, which can fix the divine in a specific concept only at the moment when a conception of the divine fills it, hence appeases, stops, and freezes it. The God of the philosophers is not the divine revealed to us, but the divine filling whatever expectations we expect to be filled by our encounter with it. In this idolatrous gaze intended for God, we actually end up only ever seeing ourselves, and this is what happens with Woody, who gazes longingly at Andy, but his behavior reveals that he's created an idol out of Andy, consigning the divine to the measure of a human or toy's gaze. Woody adores Andy, but this adoration only goes so far as he is Andy's favorite toy. When Buzz takes his place as Andy's favorite, he grows bitter, because underneath his facade of leadership in Andy's room, he was actually ultimately interested in himself, not Andy. Andy was simply his way of inflating his own ego. But to be a toy is not to be self-interested, it's to be transparent to the child who plays with you. His gaze is centered on Andy as his master, but he orients himself as the center of the world, like the philosopher placing God in their own system, rather than placing themselves before God. Woody's Andy is an idol of his own creating, in which he is the shining star, his gaze freezing Andy as he wants him. Thus, dazzled as it may be by the brilliance of the divine, the gaze still remains in possession of the idol, its solitary master. When this delusion is shattered by Andy wanting to take Buzz to Pizza Planet instead of him,
one toy,
Woody intervenes, getting them both lost due to his selfishness. But, like Woody, Buzz struggles with idolatry as well, albeit in a different way. He is thrown into the world of Andy's room, and everything he sees and does is determined by his own predeterminations about his place in the world. He is a space ranger, and his narrow vision closes off the reality of the world and Andy to him. He reads his role in the world as many people mistakenly read the Bible, literally. In scientific exegesis, one attempts to read the text on the basis of itself, as if it meant nothing more than what it obviously says. This literal reading of the world not only closes off the true meaning of the world or a text to him, but is incredibly precarious due to its incoherence. His closure to the world's revelation is eventually broken by an ad.
Calling Buzz Lightyear! Come in, Buzz Lightyear! This is Star Command! Buzz
Star
Lightyear,
Command!
Do you read me?
Buzz Lightyear responding, read you loud and clear.
Buzz Lightyear, planet Earth needs your help!
On the way!
Buzz Lightyear! The world's greatest superhero, now the world's greatest toy! Buzz has it all! Locking wrist communicator!
Calling Buzz Lightyear!
Karate chop action!
Wow!
Pulsing
missions in uncharted
And
space.
best of all, high-pressure space wings!
To infinity and beyond.
Not a flying toy.
Get your Buzz Lightyear action figure and save a galaxy near you! Buzz Lightyear!
Available at all Al's Toy Bound outlets in the Tri-County area.
Followed by a literal falling apart. This leads to his experiences of melancholy and vanity, which show up most prominently in Ecclesiastes. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. The original Hebrew word for vanity is noted by Marion, hebel, which could also be translated to vapor or breath. The world is not nothing, but it is nothing more than steam, which can dissipate like a mist under a powerful breath. After Buzz's revelation that he really is nothing more than a toy, a hunk of plastic, a body without life, a cadaver without form, his mental and spiritual condition rapidly deteriorates. As his delusion of being a space ranger collapses, so does Buzz's mental state, and Woody finds him in a less than flattering condition, partially due to Molly's dressing him up, but his inner state fares little better, as Woody discovers him mentally straying as through an infinite nothing.
Buzz, are you okay?
Gone! It's all gone. All of it's gone. Bye-bye. Woo, see ya.
What happened to you?
One minute you're defending the whole galaxy, and suddenly you find yourself sucking down Darjeeling with
Marie Antoinette and her little sister.
Buzz and Woody are both lost in the world, but will eventually be found again, with an existence renewed by love. What both need is to be reminded of their proper place in the world, not as quasi-divine heroes or divine favorites, but as toys. But they are not just toys, at least not to Andy, who loves them.
But why would Andy want me?
Why would Andy want you? Look at you! You're a Buzz Lightyear! Any other toy would give up his moving parts just to be you. You've got wings. You glow in the dark. You talk. Your helmet does that whoosh thing. You are a cool toy.
Andy and God both spill over into being. God is love, a freely given gift which gives life to the dead and calls into being what does not yet exist. Christianity operates on a subtle but profound possibility, an as-if, which Marion connects to the Greek term hos, or yet. God calls us as if we were, annulling the distinctions we normally impose on ourselves and others, because for God, that which is nothing is as if it were. Buzz and Woody's big lesson in the film is to let go of themselves and exist with a sort of transparency, not as space rangers or as the centers of all attention, but as toys. But notice that the realization is not followed by leaving the world, it is return to it. Buzz and Woody return to their place with the other toys, renewed in their sense of what it means to be who they are. Likewise, the Christian response to God should not be leaving the world, but renewing their way of inhabiting it, of recognizing their place in the world as created and loved, and playing their part of the bodies and buildings, constantly renewed in their being called.